Hello again, everybody. This is James Bartley, and you're watching and listening to the Cosmic Switchboard Show. Today, but my very special guest is Andrea Foulkes. Andrea is a past life regressionist, ancestral healing, inner child healing, spirit release, Akashic Records, Ascension 2022, star lineages. These are the things she does. Light language codes and activations. And Andrea Foulkes is a visionary intuitive and the founder of Soul Freedom Therapy, and she was the past life regression expert on the UK TV show on ITV called This Morning. So you've got quite a resume, you've got quite a story to tell, Andrea. And without any further ado, welcome to the Cosmic Switchboard Show.
Thank you, James. It's gorgeous to connect with you, and I'm already excited because I've only just learned a little bit about you, but it's fascinating the other wonderful people that you've had on as guests who I admire their work and I think they're amazing. So, and I am super interested by your story of what happened to you as well.
Yeah, thank you, Andrea. And one of the things that I'm really interested in, and I definitely want to get into the past life information later, because that to me it's key. Uh, because I think the way my simple mind works, these are past parallel lives. It's not just that it's something that happened in the linear past time wise. It's just offset from us frequency wise, but it's still in parallel and still has a fundamental connection to the here and now. To me, it's the eternal now, as far as past, present, and future is concerned. So we'll get to that. But what I've always been interested in, Andrea, is one's voyage of discovery, the origin story. How did you, Andrea, come to be the person you are, and your ability to help so many people? And how did these gifts begin to manifest themselves? So the floor is yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, as a child, I think like a lot of people, we had mystical experiences and then they get shut down and we just forget, and the only real memories I have as a child from being quite young is at night. I do have it's a very small memory of disappearing out into the cosmos and the universe through the corner of my bedroom, ceiling. I just remember that. But I was an only child, didn't have anybody to talk about these experiences with. I always felt a little bit sort of slightly different than the other children, but then I was the only child of older parents, so that sort of maybe set me a little bit apart in some ways. But I was always very kind and benevolent to other children, and I was always like recoiling in a horror at some children's behavior, if they were fighting or being mean or horrible to other children. I always struggled with that, but I was also very good at sort of spending time on my own, but I always wanted to be kind to other children and be benevolent towards them. And maybe as I got a bit older, and I seemed to have maybe a wisdom beyond my years, or a sensibleness in certain areas of my life that the other children didn't seem to have. And I also had, within that being sensible, I also had like an intuitive knowledge and wisdom or insight about things. But would I have that time call myself intuitive? No. It wasn't till I got to my late 20s and I was living in the center of London. And it's like, synchronistic events. What was it? What was it? And I think I met this lady who used to go to the gym where I went, and she was like, "Oh, I've got to go. I've got to go." And I was like, "Where are you going?" And she went, "Oh, I'm going to do an astrology course at the College of Psychic Studies in London." And I was like, "That sounds great." That was the end of it. And then, I'd see her every week and she'd be dashing off to go to do this course. And eventually she said, "Well, why don't you go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I should." And then it took a year for me to actually go to this college. And when I got there, I said, "I want to sign up for the astrology course." And they were like, "It's fully booked. We've got a psychometry course. That's all we've got for next Saturday." I was like, "What is that?" And they were like, "That's where you hold jewelry on it, inanimate objects about other people, and you pick up information." I was like, "I'll do it. I'll take it." So I signed up for this psychometry. It was a 1 day workshop. I was blown away because I didn't know anybody in the group. And these people, we were just sharing objects that we brought with us, predominantly jewelry. And these people knew all about me from this jewelry. But what blew my mind even more was that I was really accurate about the information about these people from their objects and jewelry, but I seemed to be more accurate than the rest of the group. So that blew my mind. And then I met a friend of mine, because it's all about synchronicity lining up. So a friend of mine, because I was modeling and sort of worked within that realm, she said, oh, I've just been for this amazing psychic reading with this guy. And I was like, wow, what's his name? And she told me, and I said, wow, I've been copying his name into the back of my diary for the last 11 years. This is a sign I must go and see this guy, especially as I've been on this psychometry workshop. So I go to see this guy, and he's like, you've been in a development class. And at that point, I then signed up for a development class at this College of Psychic Studies, but I didn't like the teacher as much as I liked the day workshop teacher. So he said, you've been where they haven't realized your true potential. This is going to be your path. I'm like, listen, I don't think so. I don't think this is going to be my path. He's like, yeah, you need to come and join this group of psychics who meet every week. I'm going to tell them you're coming. So he signed me up for this development class with these other people that were maybe a little bit more advanced. And so when I talked to these people, they were like, yeah, we've been in this development circle for 7 years. And then, you know, as you're doing these things, which are, you know, by our standards, like the School of Hogwarts, you know, you're learning all these things, and you're learning to, you know, do guided meditations, connect with your energies, connect with the other people. So it really was a psychic development classes every week. But very quickly, I was like top of the class, top of Hogwarts. They were saying you could do this for a living, and I was like, yeah, I don't really think so. And then just through all of this happening, stuff started to happen outside of the class for me. You know, I was starting to do things like this over myself, over my bed at home, and then the channeled messages were coming in. And by that point, everything was lining up. That's the thing I think a lot of people start to realize, is the synchronicity of things lining up. So I had someone I was modeling for their brand, and the designer for that brand, she was also spiritually waking up. So we'd talk about these things, you know, when we'd be there, and she'd be designing the clothes, and so all this would be going on. And then she'd say, wow, I know someone who does psychometry too. Maybe you should go and see this lady. So I go to see this other lady. I go there at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I come out of this lady's house about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And somehow she'd activated something in me. And it was the first time also I saw someone do transfiguration, which is where your face changes. And she turned into this really wise Chinese man who was spouting all this stuff for hours. And the only sentence I could remember was, you are your mother's daughter, but you don't carry her afflictions. And then I was going home on the train back to London from where this lady lived about 3 or 4 in the morning, and somebody on the train came towards me and said, oh, I need some money to make a phone call. Bear in mind, this is quite a few years ago. So this is like 22 years ago, around that time. So I'm like, oh, okay, would you not just want to use my phone? And he's like, no, I need some money to make a phone call. I was like, okay, you know, bear in mind, this is like 3 or 4 in the morning. And I said, why, how come you've not got a, you know, I was asking him questions. And he said, oh, I've just come out of prison. I was like, okay. And so I'm having this, you know, bizarre conversation on the train with this guy. And I happen to look at the other people in the carriage, and nobody's looking at us having this conversation, which I think is strange in itself, because it's a random conversation. And then I give him the money, but I give him more than he asked for. And then he gets up and he stands near where the door is, and he sort of speaks over to me, and he says, you've done a good thing and the universe will pay it forward. And I went, yeah, that's how it works. And he went, yeah. And I just looked down and I looked up, and he'd gone, but the train hadn't stopped. You know, so he just disappeared. So, and then I got this message, which is the first message that I ever got, which I put inside my meditation CD, which it said was, the message that I got right there and then was, the prophets in their divine wisdom spoke of the purest light, that we might one day all see the light that leads the way to a brighter future. And I knew from seeing this lady that she'd got channelings, but by then I was pretty evolved by that point, because I was already you know, levitating off my bed, doing these rewirings. It was like colors coming in, and I was already getting this message: you need to not work now. You need to not work for 3 months. I was like, do you know how expensive this rent is where I live? And they're like, trust, 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 trust. And somehow I had the ability to trust. And these messages from these very benevolent beings that I was getting, I was just trusting what they were telling me. And I was living in a very high state. And then after that kind of 9/11 was happening, it was all around that time. And everything they were telling me in these channel messages, some of them were giving me mathematical equations and telling me these were the mathematical equations for the elixir of life. I mean, these were things I had no capacity to understand, even what I was channeling. That the information that I was getting was way beyond my personality's ability to decipher it. But everything they were telling me was, you are going to have to stand on a very big soapbox for what you believe in and speak the truth as you know it to be. So around the time of 9/11, all these channelings were coming in. I had a book in the house called The Psychic Detective that a friend had gifted to me. And I was like, I can't just sit here with all these channelings about world events and not do anything about it. So I opened this book, and this was what was happening to me. It was like I'd be told something, and then I'd open a book or be told to go somewhere, or go and do something, and somebody would show up and they'd tell me someone was going to show up, or a message would be given to me. And it was exactly what I'd been told like hours or days before. So everything was like lining up in an amazing lineup of energy, and this rewiring of my energy. And I was starting to vibrate on a very, very high frequency by that time. And I felt like my body was almost losing physical density at some point.